Welcome back for another episode of Gabby Hour. I hope you guys really enjoyed the first episode with Sunshine Looters last week. And I told you that each week is going to have a new guest and someone really special that I've met along the way in my career or just through mutual connections. And this particular person, we have crossed paths a while back, going on about 9 or 10 years ago. And now we've reconnected, had a great conversation about who this person is. And as a Boston sports fan at heart, for those who know me really well, this pains me to say it, but New York fans, this one is especially for you, especially for those Yankees fans, because we have none other than the play-by-play radio announcer on WFAN for the Yankees. And let's go give him a warm welcome to Gabby Hour. Emmanuel Berbari, welcome to the Gabby Hour. I mentioned in my intro, I am a Boston sports fan. So you're a special person to have on this show because enemy territory right here. So happy to have you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm honored to be one of the first guests, I think, on the Gabby Hour. So I appreciate you coming.
Now, before we start, I like to start with kind of introducing my connection to our guests. Now, I'm going to send you a picture right now. And while I send you this, for those who don't know, Emmanuel is a fellow Long Islander. So how we met, kinda, is years ago. I played against his high school in basketball, and he just
I'm looking at the picture right now.
Oh yeah. So I'm gonna put it up. So years ago, coming on like 9 years or so, this is how he got it started. I'm gonna let him share it a little, but there was something called The Cube. Now it's NFHS Network. And Emmanuel, and I think his name is Johnny
Gadamowicz, yeah.
Yes. And I think he's at the Cyclones right now. That I knew. He commentated my high school basketball game. Guys, when I tell you, my parents were more obsessed with this man's voice over the game afterwards than if we won or lost. Like, immediately, my parents were like, this kid is going somewhere. He's going to be the next, like, whatever it is. And sure enough, he's already taking John Sterling's role. So, but Emmanuel, from there, I think it was maybe 10 years ago too, when I came in as like a seventh grader and we got smacked by you guys. But I ran home. I immediately watched The Cube. I was like, this dude is awesome.
Well, thank you. I mean, I look back and I sort of cringe at those games because I'm like, wow, I was so terrible because I just compared you improve, you grow, you try to get better. And I was just trying something. I was learning at that point. But it was people like you, your parents, who gave me that, and I'm not blowing smoke here, that initial belief that maybe I could pursue this, because people come up to me and be like, hey, like, I actually think you have a shot here. And those little just moments of affirmation, give you that sense that, yeah, like what I'm doing can be guided in a certain direction. So I appreciate you saying that. When we took that picture with your mom and then it got back to us, I remember Johnny sending me that picture and he was like, OMG. And I looked back at it. So cool, the impact that our broadcasts are having, not only for the players, but for the players and their families. So those moments were the moments I always remember from doing those games, or when someone would come up to us or we get a text like that or take a picture with a parent. Those moments meant everything to us.
Emmanuel, I mean it. Like, I do not think my parents cared if we won or lost that game. They were going to get a picture with you that day. when we found out we were playing your high school, like, oh my gosh, you're going to be on The Cube. He's going to be announced. Like, oh, this is awesome. And I remember it was like 10 o'clock at night when I got back home, won the county championship. I immediately logged in and watched the game. I was like, I got to listen to it. But look how full circle, right?
Full circle. It's amazing, to be talking in this space now, all these years later. And that's how we got, thank you. That's how we got a lot of our viewership, not only the people who watched during the game, but the people who went back afterwards, and the games were always on archive. Special place that was The Cube, now NFHS Network, as you're talking about. But it went from, I think, this is how early it started for us. We started with High School Cube, then it became The Cube, and now it's NFHS Network. So that just shows you how quickly things move.
Unbelievable. Now, how did that whole thing start? Kind of take me back to the realization, like, hey, I'm ready to do this for a living, and even at such a young age, you got to find your opportunities.
100%. And I always will tell people that some will grow up and by 7 or 8 years old, they know this is what I want to do. I want to be a sports broadcaster. Some don't figure that out until they're 20 or 25. And that's completely fine too. Like you don't have to know what you want to do in full by the time you're early on in high school or even after that. But mine was by chance. Like you talk about Johnny, a couple of my other friends, Doug, Alex, they were launching a live video streaming program at our high school, which hadn't been done before. Mr. Ambrosio is one of the great English teachers at Harbor Fields, and he was also the journalism advisor, and they were getting together with him to do that. So I can't even take credit for the initial stages of launching that. Now everyone will look at me all these years later and say, "Whoa, you started the Harbor Fields broadcasting program." I'm like, yeah, I helped start it, but it was really Doug, Alex, a couple others, and they invited me along. I would say very early, a couple weeks in, and they said we're doing a high school basketball game. And me being a freshman in high school, it wasn't a matter of this is what I want to do for a career. It was I want to fit in with my friends. I want to go and be part of what they're doing and be part of their world. And just by chance, I called one high school basketball game. I think it was December of 2013. So that was my freshman year. And that was the aha moment. That something clicked there where it is really cool. I want to know more about it. And I also realized at that stage, when I watched Yankee games, Knicks games, any sports games on TV, I was as focused on the announcers as I was the game itself.
You then went to Fordham, had a stellar career there. So obviously, a high school student trying to balance all of this. Now you're a college student trying to balance all of this. How did that work out?
Yeah. So I always had the mindset of, I'm going to make it work no matter what. I have class the next day. I have, short sleep. I don't care what it is. I'm taking every opportunity possible when I get to Fordham. And it was sort of naive in the moment. It was like tunnel vision. I'm going to go to Fordham. I'm going to do this. I'm going to make this. Like, it doesn't always work out exactly the way you want it to, but that's how I was from early on in high school. I'm like, Fordham's the school for me. Once I went to a broadcasting camp that was run by somebody who had gone to Fordham, and he showed us the campus and the studio and all the resources they had and the different alumni who had come out of that program and were so accessible too. I thought that was really cool how I could go and get access to those alumni and pick their brains, and that would get me a lot better at what I'm doing. So I knew I wanted to go to Fordham. The moment I stepped on campus, I was probably a little too eager. I knew I had to, conduct myself professionally and really make a good impression there, but really wanted to do everything I could possible right away. And there were some upperclassmen who I'll give a lot of credit to, and some of them who are, still good friends of mine to this day. Namely, someone by the name of John Furlong, who now works at NBC, and he's a researcher there. He, from the moment I stepped on campus, sort of identified me as, wow, like this guy can do it. And people can be, you understand this in sports or different parts of life, when they're established at something, it could be a club, it could be a team. By the time you're a junior or senior, people can be very groupy and protective of their turf.
Yep.
That helped cut through it. And I'm not saying anybody else was. Everybody was very accepting of me, but particularly him, inviting me to certain things and welcoming me aboard. And that made me more acceptable as an option, because instead of, oh, here's this guy who just wants to do all of what we're doing, it was, oh, there's somebody who could be part of us and part of our team.
How crucial was it for you to keep on networking? Because I'm sure even more doors opened, including, the internship you ended up getting at WFAN.
Yeah, and that, I'm glad you mentioned the internship at FAN, because you talk high school, you talk Fordham. The internship at FAN, nothing really happens in my career to this stage, in my opinion, without that initial entry foray into WFAN. And networking is crucial. I like to look at it as naturally, building a relationship with somebody. And it doesn't always have to be, what can you do for me? I think that's the wrong way to go about it, especially initially. More so, hey, here's who I am, and just wanting to connect, and a willingness to get better, and a willingness to learn about the person across from you. Basically, I graduate, and I had worked 3 years at FAN, which I was so fortunate to do. I'd interned different places too, SNY, Westwood One, among others, and they were all fundamental learning experiences. But I graduate, and FAN's the one place that you're hired already. You, at a bare minimum, I could go back to WFAN and I could work behind the scenes, and I could supplement that with whatever else I was doing. But I wanted to be a play-by-play broadcaster first and foremost. I was willing to do anything, but I want to be a play-by-play guy. I'm part-time at FAN. I get the offer to come back to the Cape League. It's tough when you're graduating in May to go and take a full season minor league job because those start before May. I would have if possible, but I figured this perfect. Graduate in May, go and do the Cape. And it was so awesome. Like, that was a graduate school of broadcasting for me, I thought, the Cape Cod League, because Dan Duva was one of my Fordham. Also went to Syracuse, but Fordham top tier mentors. The timing worked out where I was getting my first shift on the air at FAN right when I got back from Cape Cod. That was all luck. I literally got back from doing a summer of baseball. I'm working behind the scenes one day in the newsroom, and one of my bosses approaches me and says, "Hey, we're trying out a bunch of people on the air. We'd love for you to do a show." And I first of all, I said yes, and I probably
What
don't even
was your
remember.
reaction?
I just walk out. I walk out of the newsroom, and I was like on cloud nine,
Oh my God.
wondering what this actually just happened. Like, I'm going to be on the air at WFAN. It was just one show, but still, one show at that time was, I mean, everything to me. I never thought that would happen, especially at that early stage. So to your Sienna question, that was the first step after coming back from the Cape after graduation, and luckily getting a shift on FAN, which led to two, which led to a few more, and naturally grew from there. But at first, it was like a show or two a month maximum at FAN, which was amazing, but that's not a way to sustain yourself in the business. I would have sustained myself if I could, just doing that and focusing on that. But I want to do play-by-play. So the job listing I saw for CN, I'm like, oh, this is perfect. I don't have to leave WFAN. I can keep doing shows there. And is a basketball gig I was looking for, the type of full season job where I don't have to freelance it together. I could do a full slate of basketball, men's team, women's team, mix of radio, mix of TV, mix of everything. So I immediately went for that. And I didn't know anybody there, but one of the people at WFAN, where it all ties together, Bob Husler, is the voice of Fairfield, longtime voice of Fairfield.
There you go.
And I went up to him and I said, "Did you see that the Sienna job's open?" I didn't ask him for help. I just asked him out of curiosity. And he said, "Oh yeah, like I didn't see that it was open, but I know their sports information director for years." And then he went out of his way to be so kind to make a call on my behalf. It was so fun. Even looking back at, hey, I had a game 7-9, and then they called me last minute to do a talk show overnight, and I drove the 2.5 hours back to do it. Like, I look back at those rides very fondly, because like, you're doing play-by-play professionally and you're going back to do a talk show. And it's a talk show in, the biggest market in the world. And you had to remind yourself of that, because not, wow, I got to drive 2.5 hours and I'm tired and I'm not going to sleep tonight. It's no, what an opportunity in front of you.
Listen, it's 2.5 hours, but then you got to fight New York traffic. This is a tough ride.
There were a couple times where I got a little nervous because I was leaving around 9. The women's game almost went to overtime. So if it went to overtime, would I have ever made it in time? But I had to say yes to the opportunity, of course. Like, it's an overnight show on WFAN. And it got close a couple times. Like, I'm getting near that New Jersey area, Bridge. Like, we're getting into the shaky territory. And if it was a 2 a.m. show, I'd be completely fine. Midnight, I'm walking in the door probably 15 minutes before. So the entire car ride there is game planning in my mind. What is this show going to be about? How am I going to fill 5 hours? Phone calls, no phone calls. You prepare as if there are no phone calls. So it was interesting. When I'm doing Yankee post game, not only are you really lucky to do something like that, but that's simple compared to something like game planning a 5-hour show and going from play-by-play to doing a talk show. When I just have a night where I'm singularly focused on 45 to 50 minutes breaking down a Yankee game and how to make that the best version of itself, that's like you're a baseball player and you're taking your warm-up swings with a donut on the bat. You take the donut off and then it feels light. That's a Yankee post. Not to say it's easy, but compared to planning a 5-hour talk show while you're driving back in the car, that's we'll take this planning versus that planning.
Bellinger flies it into right field. Back it goes at the wall. Soto at the fence leaps. It's gone. Wow, what a night. What a night. A grand slam for Cody Bellinger. 5 times on base, and the Yankees have blown it open.
you obviously were not gifted an amazing opportunity like this. You obviously fought for it, and we're learning that now. But the beginning of this, it was sort of like a fill-in position, right?
Right. So what I'll tell people is that this is the first year, even though a lot of people and a lot was made of last year, and for good reason. John Sterling is a legend and deserved every single flower thrown in his direction last year when he stepped aside, which was more abrupt than people expected in the middle of April, but decided to do it mid-season. And all the praise and the attention on, oh, well, who's going to fill the gap? And a lot was made of that. But this is the first year where I'm around the Yankees every day. This is the first year with the post-game role where I'm around it every day, because last year I was around a lot, but we were all rotating throughout the season to fill the gaps that John had left after he retired. So I started back in 2023 as a pure post-game fill-in. I was in the mix for a couple play-by-play openings at FAN just by virtue of being there, being a talk show host, an update anchor, an internal guy, doing CN in the backdrop, doing minor league baseball in the backdrop. So they were familiar with my work as a play-by-play guy while I was doing the talk shows, while I was doing update anchoring and whatever they needed of me. And then that led to a couple conversations where I didn't get certain jobs in the play-by-play realm at FAN, but it put me in the conversation for when they needed Yankee fill-in on post-game 2023. I started filling in here and there, and that was the biggest opportunity possible. I remember one of my bosses called me before the 2023 season, and I didn't know at that point, because I was doing enough at FAN. Am I going back to minor league baseball? Am I not? I was sort of in a limbo phase. I didn't know if I'll be doing baseball that year. And I sort of come to peace with the fact that, hey, if baseball doesn't happen this year, we could reassess it for next year. Just focus on your talk show.
You're preparing to talk yourself off the ledge. That's unbelievable.
And then I got a call, and he said, I have good news and I have bad news. And he gave the bad news first. Said, you're not getting the post-game job. And he said, the good news is we have 40 fill-in games for you on post-game. And I said, stop. I said, this is not a bad news phone call. I said, this is all good news. I said, I would be fine with one post-game. The fact that you're going to be 40 as a fill-in, like a member of the broadcast team, was, sensational at that point. So that was one of those moments where I was like, whoa, I definitely really lucky to be in that position. Tried to do the best I could and just ingratiate myself within that, Yankee broadcast, family and fabric. And then having done that and gaining some trust, late 2023, both John and Susan Waldman took a series off in Pittsburgh. And since I had done post-game all year and gained enough trust, they called me into the office, and it was two of my bosses and not one of them. I'm like, oh, something must be. Normally doesn't happen this way. I've never been to Pittsburgh. And I said, once I was actually doing the A10 women's basketball championship for Fordham back in 2019. That's the only time I've ever been to Pittsburgh. They said, well, we got the Yankee series against the Pirates, middle of September, and this is a month out. And I was floored. I had no idea that was a remote possibility. I walked out of the office, and I don't know. I probably blacked out, but that was my first introduction to calling Yankee baseball after doing some post game that year.
And to add some information to this story to make it more impressive, you are 24. It's crazy. Like, it's so crazy how big of a feat this is. And I mean, obviously the sky's the limit right now, but that from there, having that responsibility, how did that feel? That when you stepped in those shoes for the first time as a 24-year-old, what was going through your mind? What was that game like, the preparation and everything surrounding it?
I really poured a lot into my preparation for a month, learned everything to do with the Pittsburgh Pirates. I knew that was the opponent. So I'm like, there's no excuse not to know everything possible about Pittsburgh. Yankees I've been following all year, so I knew most of what was going on, but I still wanted to make sure I was versed and up to speed by the time that series came about. And then I just remember the morning that I flew out, which was the day before the game, because I was joining them in Pittsburgh. The Yankees were on a 2-city road trip, Boston and Pittsburgh. So they were going to fly in that night. I was flying in separately from Long Island. And that morning, the New York Post story broke that I was filling in, and my phone was just getting flooded with people. And
oh, I can imagine.
I was so humbled and overwhelmed that people were taking the time to reach out. But at the same time, I needed to compartmentalize that I still have a series to prepare for. So I was trying to get back to as many texts as I could without overdoing it with my brain. as I landed in Pittsburgh, as I got into the hotel the Yankees were staying at, and all that came with it. And as I was sitting in that booth, it was overwhelming. And I just needed to simplify things and remind myself, look, minor league, major league, you've done this before. You've worked at this for a long time, even though compared to other people, it wasn't a long time. And a few words really stuck out, like a few people around the Yankees broadcast and them telling me just to not make too much of it. Aaron Boone, the Yankee manager, when we went down to do our pregame interviews that day, like he would advise a player going into his major league debut, he sort of unprompted. I never asked him. I was too nervous to ask him for advice, but he came up to me and said, he said, have fun. Let the game come to you. Don't try to do too much.
Wow.
And that was all I needed to hear. Anyone could have given me advice, and Aaron Boone saying that right there was everything, because I knew I could go in there and like let the game breathe, let the game flow. And I probably didn't do that enough. I was still probably too psyched out where I talked too much on that series. But that's been an ongoing process where I remember going back from that series, and I saw Susan the next series in the clubhouse. She's like, she's like, you did good. And she goes, just remember, like, this isn't football. This isn't basketball. Like, you can always let the game breathe. And I thought that was such great advice. And I never would have, I feel, excelled in that spot or done even okay in that spot if those people didn't make me feel like this is an opportunity you're ready for.
Now a year goes by, and in the middle of the next season, John Sterling steps down. And in that moment, when you find out about that, did you have an inkling that this maybe all eyes might be looking to you?
I knew that it would be talked about. I knew that it would be when he retired. Like, first of all, you're thinking, whoa, like, amazing. You never think John's going to retire, even though he's 85, 86 years old. Like, he's going to retire at some point, but he's just such a workhorse and a legend that we took it for granted. Like, he's going to be there no matter what. So I knew it would be talked about. And I knew that a lot would be made of those next 24, 48 hours into his retirement, into what would happen after that, because Justin and I were each scheduled for 25 games filling in for him on the road that season. He'd already scaled back on his travel even more. So naturally, as guys who already had 25 games locked in, that would be talked like, is that going to stay the same? Is that going to change? Is it going to be upped? Anything could have happened in that moment. And looking back, actually, I feel really fortunate that they expanded our workload, because they easily could have kept the 25, or they could have gone an entirely different direction. Like, John retired, the entire landscape changes when John retires, as opposed to filling in for him. So naturally, those thoughts creep in. It gets written about. And then in the days that followed, every story that came out that was being sent to me, and I tried to, like I was talking about on the way to Pittsburgh, like, you try to just compartmentalize as much as possible. Like, try not to read the headlines too much. Every story was, here are the leading candidates. And we were naturally listed as people who had done filling games and were scheduled to continue doing games. So I had an inkling that it would be discussed, but in that moment, didn't have a ton of time to think, because the week before the official news came out, John had missed a couple, and we had to fill in on home games, and I had to focus on, wow, earlier than expected, I got to fill in on play-by-play and do a good job with it. So it was really, how do I do a good job that night, and trying to keep a singular focus there.
This is your first season as a full-time member of the broadcast. Obviously, stepping into big shoes. How did the first few games mentally, how did you prepare for that? Obviously, you had a ton of experience filling in and stuff like that, but officially, this is a full-time, no stakes, and you're showing up day after day.
Great question. I think it changed this year just a little bit, in the sense that you're around every day. And I tried to be around as much as I could last year, even when I wasn't working. So I could be part of it and understand what's going on with the team and live and breathe the team. I feel like that's really important to do. But yeah, this year I tried to approach it exactly the same, except you're around every day. So you're more in it for the long haul. Understand that this is 1 out of 162. Don't try to do too much, like circling back to that, because there are 162 games, and just live the story of the season. And you're going to prepare for the other teams that come in. You're going to talk to the opposing broadcasters and try to get the heartbeat of the other team that's coming in. But yeah, just reminding myself, you've done this exact thing before, whether it be pre or post filling play-by-play, you've done all of this these last couple of years. Just try to always make improvements and go from there. But don't treat any singular day like it's too much. Just treat every day as a chance to get better. And then you repeat that 162 times throughout the year.
Oh, it's that easy, right? It's that easy.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
The simple approach. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. One of the things that you have the luxury of doing, people do this as a bucket list. You visit all of the ballparks. Do you have a favorite that you have commentated at so far?
Great question. I always have a hard time with this one because a lot of them are up there for me. The nicest parks stand out above the rest, but I'm biased towards the one that had personal significance to my journey in my career so far. And conveniently, the one that has the most nostalgia for me also happens to be a consensus top 3 or 4 ballpark in the league for any fans. And that's PNC Park in Pittsburgh. Like back in 2023, when I got the call up, if you will, I went to that ballpark, and it's not only a gorgeous, gorgeous stadium, but it has the Pittsburgh skyline, downtown Pittsburgh. Across the way, you have the Clemente Bridge and the parallel bridges down the Allegheny River. There's so much with the structure of that ballpark that's beautiful and a classic baseball feel. So I have to put that one at the top because it not only, you ask any baseball fan, they're going to list that in their top 5, but it also happened to be the first Major League Series that I ever called. I also love Seattle. I was just there, and Seattle's really underrated, I think, as a city, but as a ballpark, just gorgeous. And the sight lines too from the booth are outstanding. And I just came back from Dodger Stadium, and the history and everything that comes along with Dodger Stadium, you feel like you're in a traditional baseball atmosphere, and you walk around, and all the plaques and the little bits of history that you encounter every 5 feet seemingly on a wall is tremendous. It's out of this world. So Dodger Stadium's definitely up there. Fenway Park, even talking to a Red Sox fan.
There you go.
Yeah. I can lose my bias sometimes too. I think Fenway Park is really, in terms of feeling like you're part of something way bigger, right there. I did a game from there, and broadcasters will tell you that there are much better sight lines to do a game from than Fenway Park in terms of where the booth is positioned. But you're looking down from the booth, and there's a green monster like right there. And
it feels like you're on the field because it's sticking out.
Correct. And when I look out, and immediately you're just looking out at the green monster and everything that comes with Fenway Park, as a baseball nut, that is crazy to me. So
that's it right there.
Fenway Park, Camden Yards in Baltimore, I think, is gorgeous, but I would really put PNC Park, Seattle's up there, Dodger Stadium's up there. Yankee Stadium, though, I mean, I'm not going to sell short the ballpark I go to every single day. And some Yankee fans would say, I prefer the old stadium to the new stadium. But to me, they retain so many of the elements that made the old stadium great. And the new stadium, when it's a big game, it still rocks. And I love that about Yankee Stadium.
Those fans are absurd. Listen, you grew up as one, you grew up with them. They're bizarre. We talked about the best. I know you're going to be polite about the parks, but is there a least favorite that you've been to?
Wow. Good question. Is there a least favorite ballpark? Well, now it's easy to say Tropicana Field because
yeah,
it's not being used. And I was there a couple of times last year. I went to my first play-by-play series this year was at Sutter Health Park in Sacramento, which is a minor league stadium by trade, but the Yankees are playing there this year. Now, it's easy to put that one down, but they've done an amazing job, I think, from a staff and facility standpoint of dressing that place up and making it usable for a major league game. And I just think they've done a tremendous job, even though it's not a major league stadium, but they've done everything possible to make it one.
All of these amazing moments that have happened, is there one that sticks out the most that may be like a really memorable call? Listen, this could also be basketball. Not to mention, you're also doing Fox Sports college hoops as well. So, but is there any memorable call that you have had so far?
I think it probably has to be Judge's 300th because it's Aaron Judge. And when it's with him, the moment feels bigger. Like, this is one of the greats to ever play our game. When it's all said and done, we're going to be looking at him right alongside all the greats that have ever put on a Major League Baseball uniform, put on a Yankee uniform. So to call not only a big Yankee moment, but his moment, it carries more weight, just in the eyes of, I think, a broadcaster or a baseball fan.
And that is so sick. And talking about players, you obviously interact with them a lot. Is there anyone in particular on and off the field you're like, man, this dude is awesome?
I feel like whenever you're in a media scrum with Jazz Chisholm, he has something really interesting to say. Like last night, he was talking about he had an immediate return home run. It worked out great where he came back off the IL immediately, helped the Yankees win a game. And the home run went into the first row, and he kind of admired it. So you wonder if that ball went off the wall, would he have even gotten to second base? He probably would have. He's a fast base runner, but I think the question was asked to him. And, Reggie Jackson once had the quote about admiring a home run. Like, I've hit 500 plus of these. I know what a home run looks like. And Jazz obviously hasn't hit 500 home runs, but he said, I've hit 1,000 home runs in my dreams. Like,
oh
and
my gosh,
he knows what a home run looks like from having dreamt of hitting 1,000. So he's a cool customer, and he's a good balance for that Yankee room, a good energy infuser.
If there's one thing I've seen from that team is that they click a lot. Like they all have a great chemistry, and obviously you see that behind the scenes. So that is so cool. My final question, being in the Bronx, being in New York City, you got to give us your go-to spots, kind of maybe a place you go before every game, or just some sort of spot that you call home.
Great question. I just moved into the city. So, I was Long Island through and through, and I just moved into the city. So I'm still getting used to everything.
So
here.
You've been commuting to games?
Yeah, I was commuting from Long Island, and now I'm a 4-train ride away, which is great. They're one of the great.
Oh my! You were taking the LIRR and then transferring and taking this. Oh my! Wow. I already thought you were impressive. That might be the most impressive thing I've heard in this call. That's unbelievable.
It was either that or it was a late night drive and trying to make it happen. But then that comes with the traffic going in from Long Island, which we all know.
At least you could take a nap when you can. But yeah, that is unbelievable. Wow. All right. So back to that question. Give us your favorites in New York City, Bronx, just since you've been acclimated.
I am a very simple, bland eater. So, I love a good gourmet meal, like on a night that I have off, or going to a great restaurant or trying a new restaurant. But I'm normally not a big breakfast guy. So I just get my coffee, and that's the staple of my morning into early afternoon. And by the time I get to the stadium, maybe I've had a snack, but that's about it. And then the Yankee Stadium has Shepard's Dining, which is named after the great public address announcer, the late Bob Shepard. And they have these spreads every single night that you dream of. I mean, they have pretty much every type of food. It rotates every night, and you get an all-you-can-eat buffet for fixed price as a media member, broadcast member. So I pretty much eat there every day in some way, shape, or form. I try not to overdo it because it's very tempting to get ice cream too and everything they have to offer.
I've been to that VIP box in Yankee Stadium. It's like a 5-star restaurant, like double deck. It's unbelievable. Oh my goodness,
it's really crazy. I mean, it's not real life stuff.
No.
But yeah, I'll get back to you on dinner spots as I go along here. But I do love unwinding from a day at the game, unless I'm going straight to bed. There's a good deli right downstairs from my apartment. I'll just go get a late night deli, sandwich or something like that. I also am coming from Long Island, I'm a big egg sandwich guy. So if no matter the time of day, that could work. It could be 11 o'clock at night. It could be 8 o'clock in the morning. A good egg sandwich when I'm craving one. Could be on anything. It could be on hero bread. It could be on a roll. It could be on whole wheat wrap. I don't care what it is. A good egg sandwich gets the job done. So shout out to the downstairs deli right here on Lexington Ave.
Hey, it's medicinal. We need it. That's just part of our culture. My gosh. Well, Emmanuel Berbari on the Gabby Hour. Thank you so much. I had such a fun time catching up, talking to you, and learning even more how impressive you are. I'm going to put in the description how to find you on social media, catch up with him on all the Yankee games. The Yankees stink, but he doesn't. So let's go. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Emmanuel, for your time today.
Thanks so much for having me, Gabby. This was full circle, so I really do appreciate it.